My sister-in-law laughed. I used your college fund to buy my dream house. Say goodbye to being a doctor. She had no idea I already inherited the $800,000. When her purchase fell through, I exposed her darkest secret. I, 24M, never thought family could cut so deep until the day my sister-in-law destroyed everything I thought I knew about trust. The memory still burns like acid in my chest, but what happened next changed everything. My parents died in a car accident when I was 16. My older brother Jake became my guardian, and his wife Sarah moved into our childhood home to help raise me. They seemed like saints back then, sacrificing their newlywed bliss to keep our family together. What I didn't know was that they had access to my college fund, $150,000 my parents had carefully saved since I was born. For 2 years, I worked part-time jobs while maintaining straight A's, believing every penny was going toward my pre-med degree. Sarah would pat my shoulder and tell me how proud she was of my dedication. She'd even help me study sometimes, bringing me coffee and encouraging me to keep pushing toward my dream of becoming a doctor. The day I graduated high school, I sat down with Jake to discuss college finances. That's when my world imploded. Jake couldn't meet my eyes as he explained that the money was gone. Sarah had convinced him they needed it for a down payment on their dream house, a sprawling suburban mansion with a 3-car garage and swimming pool. They'd been living there for 6 months already. I felt the blood drain from my face as the reality hit me. Every late night I'd spent studying, every weekend I'd worked instead of hanging out with friends, every sacrifice I'd made, all meaningless now. My acceptance to the state university's pre-med program meant nothing without funding. Sarah walked into the room during our conversation, and when she saw my devastated expression, something shifted in her face. The mask of fake concern slipped away, replaced by something cold and calculating. She told me I was being dramatic, that I could take out loans like everyone else. When I pointed out that I'd been counting on that money for 8 years, she actually laughed. The sound was sharp and cruel, nothing like the warm chuckles I remembered from our study sessions. She said I should be grateful they'd kept me out of foster care, that housing and feeding me for 2 years had been expensive. Then came the words that shattered something fundamental inside me. She'd used my college fund to buy her dream house, and I should say goodbye to being a doctor. The casual cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. This woman who'd pretended to care about my future had stolen it without a second thought. Jake just sat there, unable to defend either of us, trapped between his wife and his brother. I left that house the same day and moved in with my best friend's family. They were kind enough to let me stay rent-free while I figured out my next steps. College seemed impossible now. Even with loans, I'd need money for living expenses, books, and everything else. But Sarah had made one crucial mistake. She assumed she knew everything about my finances. What she didn't know was that my grandmother had left me a substantial inheritance when she passed away the previous year. Grandma had been specific in her will. The money was to remain untouched until I turned 21, and only I could access it. The lawyer handling the estate had contacted me directly, and I'd never mentioned it to Jake or Sarah. $800,000 sat waiting in an account they knew nothing about. I spent the next 3 years in college, paying my own way and letting them believe I was drowning in debt. I'd see Sarah occasionally at family gatherings, and she'd make snide comments about my poor life choices and how I should have been more realistic about my goals. Each comment was a knife twist, but I endured it all while planning. During my junior year, I learned something interesting. Sarah worked as a real estate agent, and she'd been cutting corners on some of her deals. A friend who worked in property law mentioned seeing some questionable paperwork with her name on it. I started paying attention, asking casual questions, gathering information. It turned out Sarah had been falsifying income documents for clients who couldn't qualify for mortgages on their own. She'd created fake pay stubs and employment letters, helping people secure loans they couldn't afford. It was mortgage fraud on a significant scale, and she'd been doing it for years. I documented everything carefully. Bank records, forged documents, client testimonials. I built an airtight case while maintaining my facade of the struggling college student. The perfect opportunity came during my senior year. Sarah called me out of the blue, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. She'd heard through Jake that I was applying to medical schools and wanted to offer some advice. She told me I should consider a more practical career path, maybe something in retail or food service. Medical school was expensive, and people like me, people without family money, rarely made it through. Her condescension was so thick I could practically taste it through the phone. Then she delivered the final insult. She'd just closed on an even bigger house, a mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood in town. The commission from her recent sales had made it possible, and she wanted me to know how well she was doing with my money. That night, I made my move. I'd been monitoring the real estate market, and I knew Sarah's new house purchase was contingent on selling her current home. The buyers were a young couple she'd helped secure a fraudulent loan 2 years earlier. I'd been tracking their financial situation, and they were already struggling with payments. I contacted the couple anonymously, posing as a concerned citizen who'd noticed irregularities in their loan documents. I provided them with evidence of the fraud and contact information for a lawyer who specialized in mortgage fraud cases. Within a week, their lawyer had contacted the FBI. The investigation moved quickly once they had concrete evidence of Sarah's document falsification. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation, and suddenly, she couldn't close on the new house. But I wasn't finished. I'd also been in contact with several of Sarah's other victims, families who'd lost their homes when they couldn't make payments on loans they should never have qualified for. I helped them organize their evidence and connect with legal representation. The day Sarah's house purchase fell through, I drove to Jake's house. Sarah answered the door, and I could see the stress written across her face. Her perfect life was crumbling, and she had no idea why. She tried to maintain her usual condescending tone, asking if I was there to borrow money again. I told her I had something to show her instead. I handed her a folder containing copies of all the evidence I'd gathered about her mortgage fraud. Her face went white as she flipped through the documents. Bank records, forged pay stubs, client statements, everything was there. I explained that the FBI had already been contacted and that several of her victims were pursuing both criminal and civil cases against her. Her real estate career was over, and she was likely facing federal charges. The look of shock and terror in her eyes was everything I'd hoped for, but I wasn't done yet. I told her about my inheritance, the $800,000 I'd had access to all along. I explained that I'd never needed her stolen money, that I'd been planning this moment for years. Every condescending comment, every cruel laugh, every moment she'd made me feel worthless had been building to this. Sarah tried to stammer out an apology, claiming she'd always planned to pay me back, that it had all been a misunderstanding. But we both knew the truth. She'd stolen my future because she could, because she thought I was powerless to stop her. I told her I was starting medical school in the fall, fully funded by my own money. I'd be living in a nice apartment near campus, while she'd probably be living in a federal prison. The final twist came a month later. The investigation into Sarah's activities had uncovered something even more damaging. She'd been embezzling money from her real estate agency's escrow accounts. The amounts were substantial, and the evidence was overwhelming. Jake called me the day she was arrested. His voice was broken as he tried to apologize for everything that had happened. He claimed he'd never known about the fraud, that Sarah had hidden it all from him. I wanted to believe him, but trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. Sarah was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison in order to pay restitution to her victims. The house she'd bought with my college fund was seized as part of the asset forfeiture. Jake had to sell it to help cover the legal fees and restitution payments. Update 1. 6 months after Sarah's sentencing, Jake reached out again. He'd filed for divorce and was trying to rebuild his life. He wanted to make things right between us, to somehow repair the damage that had been done to our family. I met him at a coffee shop near my medical school. He looked older, worn down by the weight of everything that had happened. He apologized again for not protecting me, for choosing his wife over his brother when it mattered most. He told me he'd found evidence that Sarah had been planning to steal even more money from me. She'd been researching ways to access my inheritance, trying to find loopholes that would give her control over those funds as well. The only thing that had stopped her was the ironclad nature of my grandmother's will. I realized then that my revenge had been more than just payback, it had been protection. If I hadn't acted when I did, Sarah might have found a way to steal everything from me. Jake asked if there was any chance we could rebuild our relationship. I told him I needed time, that trust wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. But I didn't close the door completely. He was still my brother, even if he'd made terrible choices. Update 2. 2 years into medical school, I received a letter from Sarah in prison. She'd found out about my inheritance and was furious that I'd deceived her. She claimed I'd ruined her life over money I didn't even need, that I was cruel and vindictive. The letter was filled with self-pity and blame, but no real remorse for what she'd done to me or her other victims. She still saw herself as the victim in this story, unable to comprehend the pain she'd caused. I threw the letter away without responding. Some people never learn, never grow, never accept responsibility for their actions. Sarah was one of those people, and engaging with her would only give her more power to hurt me. Instead, I focused on my studies and my future. I was excelling in medical school, making friends, building the life I'd always dreamed of. The money Sarah had stolen would have been nice to have, but it hadn't been necessary. My grandmother's gift had ensured I could achieve my goals without compromise. Update 3. I'm now in my residency at a prestigious hospital, specializing in emergency medicine. The work is demanding but fulfilling, and I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Sarah hadn't stolen my college fund, if I'd never discovered her fraud, if I'd never gotten my revenge. Would I have been as motivated to succeed? Would I have developed the same resilience and determination? It's impossible to know, but I suspect the adversity made me stronger. Jake and I have slowly rebuilt our relationship. He's remarried now, to a woman who actually seems to care about family and integrity. We have dinner occasionally, and while things aren't the same as they were before, there's a foundation of respect that wasn't there when we were younger. Sarah was released from prison last year. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's working in a call center and living in a small apartment across town. She lost everything: her career, her house, her marriage, her reputation. The life she built on lies and theft crumbled completely. I don't feel sorry for her. Actions have consequences, and she's living with hers now. The family she defrauded got some measure of justice, and I got my revenge. More importantly, I got my life back. Sometimes people ask if I regret what I did, if I think my revenge was too harsh. I tell them that Sarah made her choices, and I made mine. She chose to steal from a teenager who trusted her. She chose to laugh at my broken dreams. She chose to build her happiness on someone else's pain. I chose to fight back. The $800,000 my grandmother left me wasn't just money, it was freedom. Freedom from Sarah's cruelty, freedom to pursue my dreams, freedom to become the person I was meant to be. And when the time came to use that freedom as a weapon, I didn't hesitate. Justice isn't always pretty, and revenge isn't always noble. But sometimes they're necessary. Sometimes they're the only way to restore balance to a world that's been tilted by cruelty and greed. I'm Dr. Anonymous now, and every day I help save lives. Sarah is just another cautionary tale about what happens when you underestimate the people you've wronged. She thought she'd broken me, but she only made me stronger. The best revenge, they say, is living well. But sometimes the best revenge is making sure the people who hurt you face the consequences of their actions. Sometimes it's both.